Abstract Curiosity Podcast is your go-to spot for those eager to level up with a deeper sense of self by exploring the world with a curious eye. We are two gurus in human design and astrology on a mission to spice up life with a burning passion and enthusiasm of topics like
Chiron, gene keys, spirituality, channeling, and really any life transition. Life's a journey, and sometimes we just need a funky new roadmap to navigate our way through this wild world. Welcome.
My name is Rebeka. I'm a 1-3 mental projector, Virgo sun, Cap, moon, and rising.
Hey, I'm Michelle. Welcome to our podcast. I am an emotional generator, 4-1 emotional generator, Scorpio sun, Aquarius moon, and Cancer rising.
Oh, you're getting faster.
I am getting faster. It takes me a minute to get through that. She just reels it off, and I'm like, I have to think it through like everything in my life.
Well, I feel like mine is easier because two of them are the same. So I'm just like, Virgo, Cap.
And tell them why we always share that to everybody real quick.
Yes, if you are new here, we just like to introduce ourselves that way so that you can know the filter through which we experience this world and through which we are communicating, so you can relate to us a little deeper and relate it to your own life in a special way.
Yes. So today we thought we would start it off a little differently, right? It's interesting because Chiron has been like the focal point for Rebeka and I for quite a while now. And part of the thing that we've learned by studying Chiron from other authors, and particularly we want to give a shout out to Barbara Hand-Clow because I personally think her book on Chiron is fascinating. I love this. And so what we've learned with studying Chiron is that he is actually the divination tool, which is really interesting because I've been into oracle cards and tarot cards for probably, 10, 12 years now. And I love it when I read that Chiron isn't represented itself. Chiron is a centaur, right? Mm-hmm. And it isn't he is not represented in like the tarot deck or the tarot deck, however you say it. I say it weird. I'm a Midwesterner. But he is the divination reader. He is very holistic in his energy. He believes in the healing modalities of the self, right? Learning about self so much and utilizing the tools with it all. So we thought, because we're very much connected, I think both Rebeka and I can feel the Chiron energy when we work together. We thought we'd do a card, and this is an interesting card that has been coming up a lot, and I think it's kind of cool because it's part of the collective. So this is considered 3 of Cups. I'm going to say what I feel from it, and you can say what you're feeling from it, Rebeka. But this is the star system of the Pleiades, which a lot of people understand who the Pleiadians are. They're one entity groups from a different star system. And the 3 is always about unity. It's about grounded unity with sisterhood, like truly involved with it all. It is such a collective energy. Think about the collective circuitry in human design. And I feel like this card has been coming up a lot for me personally and for some of my clients because I feel like we're in this new space, right? As we're walking into the age of Aquarius, as we're all learning that it's okay for all of us to show up as we are and not have to worry about the judgment of other people. And that, obviously Rebeka and I love to support other people in their own journey of their collective consciousness. So I'm loving this message, like finding your sisterhood. Like if you don't have your sisterhood, maybe it's a time to create one. And part of it's going to be here on this podcast. We're so happy to have anybody who is, feels the desire to listen to what Rebeka and I are sharing here. We're like, you're a part of our family here, and we love it. Like we're getting responses from a lot of different people, which I flipping love. So let us know how 3 of Cups relates to you. It's about emotions. It's about the Trinity, right? And the Trinity means a lot of different things to different people. And your connection with something that's larger than you. What did you get from it? Did you get anything? Yeah.
Beautiful. I do love the imagery of the Trinity, and it's funny. A few things moved through my mind. The three women, like the three stages of womanhood that we had talked about before, the maiden, the mother, and the crone, right? But then
Yes.
also it was like thinking about me, you, and Chiron working together, but then also like me, you, and the audience, kind of looking up to the sky where Chiron is, right? And so we're all
Yes.
moving through that together. And so those are the things that came to me. And I love when you called out the sisterhood. That's something that has eluded me most of my life. And I've really been moving more into nurturing my relationships with other women. And, you know, just one of the reasons I'm so grateful for you being in my life. So I just think
feel
that
the
is a
same way.
beautiful card. And I feel like the cup,
Yeah.
like, okay, to be clear for anybody, like, I have not studied the tarot. I'm just going based on what popped in my head for this one. But the cups, it was just like really giving me this kind of abundance feeling of like, like inner abundance, like filling up your cup. That's what it felt like.
And that's what I love about it, is that it's just your purity, and you're helping other people, right, who haven't studied it and are afraid of it. You don't need to be afraid of it. It should all be intuitively based, right? That's the cool part of all of that. And you hit it right on. Freaking love it. Like, that was beautiful. And I just love the idea that learning like about Chiron, right? And the idea that he is the divination tools. Like, there was something about that when I read that in her book that really ignited me. It's like, no wonder I've always felt a pull. No wonder I had her book for years in my shelf. And I think you and I have talked about this, but I had bought Barbara Handclaugh's book on Chiron, I don't know how many years ago. I wonder if I could figure that out. But it was over my head at that time. I still hadn't integrated astrology to the point that I have now. So it's not for the faint of heart, by the way. It's not a book that you're going to be like cozying up and like, ooh, I can't wait to read this for days and days. It's a tool. It is a learning book. And if you understand astrology, it's a pretty cool tool to be able to understand more about the history of Chiron, right? I always think that's kind of cool.
Yes, it is a textbook more so than a light reading thing, but it is really fascinating. And I thought that was interesting too, to think about Chiron as the healer, because they do kind of talk about Chiron being a healer, but really going into the depths of it is like, no, he like kings and queens brought him in to heal themselves and their kids, and he was very respected and utilized for that purpose and to be a holistic healer. And I like how she called out how that's part of why it should really be the ruler of Virgo.
Yeah, and I hook, line, and sinker, I'm there with her. I truly do utilize that now, with the understanding when I'm looking at somebody's anything in their astrology chart and it's in Virgo. It's like it's ruled by Chiron, and to look at it from that point of view, like if you're a deep astrologer, that's kind of like mind blowing. It's like she really stepped out of the box. And by the way, she wrote this book, I believe, in the 80s. So Chiron had only been discovered for a decade, possibly, when she wrote it.
Maybe 10 years. Yeah.
We need to get her on the podcast. I would love to pick her brain.
Oh my gosh.
About Chiron now, right? Yeah, I know she's really hard to get a hold of.
We're manifesting that.
We are going to manifest that. Yeah, anybody listening to this that has a connection with her, please let us know. We would love to interview her
or
and get
at
her.
least just send out some vibes.
Yeah, that would be perfect. That would be flippin' perfect. I would love that so much.
But
yeah,
okay,
so
I gotta
today,
say too.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just thinking.
No.
I just want to expand a little bit on the Chiron Virgo connection, because I have a sun in Virgo, as we said, not a son, my son. You know what I mean. So, with my sun in Virgo, that's the only planet I have in Virgo. So I think it's really interesting that we've been connected through this work. But also, that feels just so much more empowering than the languaging I'd heard all before about Virgo. It seems like everybody is like, oh, Virgos are just so analytical and they just want to put everything in order and you just need to relax and stop thinking so much. And nobody calls out the like Earth Mother healer aspect of it. And the whole virgin idea of a woman unto herself. Like when somebody said that to me for the first time and saying, this is a woman unto herself, this is a powerful woman. like it totally changed my perspective on the Virgo energy, and I'm just grateful for that.
Yeah, girl, I hadn't. Okay, I love that because I obviously don't have a sun in my sun sign's not in Virgo, but so let me ask you a few questions on that. Knowing
Okay.
that if you're falling under the belief system like I am of Chiron being that ruler, not being the ruler because it's Virgo was before told it was ruled by why am I blanking out? Is it Mercury?
Mercury.
Yeah. And instead being ruled by Chiron, which makes so much sense because, and let me ask this, because Virgo and that placement of Virgo it's like daily routines, but it also has to do with two different categories. It has to do with work, kind of like what your work, and health. So looking at your Virgo placement there and understanding that it is daily routines, it has to do with small animals, it has to do with like how you're operating in the world. What is your service, which sometimes people consider that a work or a job, and or your health. So when you hear that now that possibly you're taking in Chiron as your main planet, the ruler of your space, how do you look at that a little differently now? Like, can you give some, because I know you get some downloads.
Interesting to think about, because
Right?
it does feel so much more empowering. And when I think about the daily aspect, it's funny too because I just started really changing some aspects of my health and my daily routine. Like I've been getting extra vitamins and certain things, and gosh, yeah, I'm gonna have to sit with that because that really does change some perspective of thinking like how am I showing up in this healing capacity every day? How is that part of my routine and my nurturing? And like how I really do need to focus on that for myself in order to show up in the best capacity and to be able to do the transformation. Because also my sun gate is gate 47 about transformation, and it's in the 8th house about transformation. So I cannot create any transformation if I'm not healthy. Oh my gosh. And what
That
have I
was
been
good.
avoiding for like 10 years? Doctors and like I've been healthy-ish, but I
Yeah.
haven't really
Yeah.
been taking care of myself. Oh my gosh. Light bulb moment.
A light bulb moment, her aha. Well, and you're also at the point in your phase like where the kids aren't glued to you anymore, and all of a sudden you can stop and say like, "Hello, where am I in this whole equation of life?" But okay, and the other interesting thing that popped into my head when you were talking was, and it's an earth sign, like you said. And to me, an earth sign is that thing that can become very holistic, that can utilize like all of the elementals that are around it, right? We always think of Taurus in that way or Capricorn in that way. But sometimes I forget that Virgo energy it's such a tangible. It's got such tangibility. I don't know if that's even a word, but it's got these elements to it where when it can enhance and understand its Chiron, meaning, hey, holistically, I can probably do more with healing for myself and for other people, because that's what we truly believe. We believe that anybody who has their Chiron in the 6th or 12th house, or Chiron's in retrograde in your natal. By the way, we're talking all about natal stuff right now. Not in your natal doesn't change, but all of that we consider you true healers. And isn't that interesting, Rebeka, to think about how this being your sun sign and you being a person of transition because of everything else that you've related, and how that all can relate to this undertone of what Chiron is helping you to heal, and how then you're teaching other people how to heal in a very holistic and organic way, because that's what he was about, right? He was all about all of the arts. And I'm going to be a little daring and I'm going to stretch this a little bit. Maybe. Yeah, I will.
Do it.
In some aspects, it reminds me of what Jesus would have done, in the sense of how my belief system and what I've studied, and I'm curious to hear what you have to say about it, that Jesus went on this like 40-year journey where he was learning all of the aspects, from the Druids to the people in the East, all of the I don't want to say that word, all of the Asian aspects of healing. Like, he was going around learning all of that. And so in some aspects, understanding that he was bringing that into the earth to make it finite, right? Just like Chiron's always been here to help us bring things. There's always phases. I think there's many spiritual teachers out there who brought that in. And I'm not saying this in a religious or a spiritual aspect. I'm just talking in the framework of what we understand Jesus to be. So I think it's kind of interesting. I never thought of it that way.
I haven't either. And while you were talking, it hit me that I have the sun in Virgo, my moon in Capricorn, my Chiron is in Taurus. And those are the only earth placements I have. And I hadn't thought about how it's trining essentially in that way. I don't know if it exactly is, but sign-wise it is. That's wild.
All earth signs. Slow and steady wins the race, baby.
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Fascinating. Okay, see, a whole other layer to unpack. We didn't even get into this in the last episode where we were looking at my chart. So it's like, this is why it's fun. It's always teaching us stuff. Always teaching us stuff. And then, like you were just saying with Jesus, like learning all these different aspects, I feel like that's something that I always get curious about. Like, I used to be very religious, and I had studied the Bible and I studied extra text a whole bunch because I'm me. And then I've been more spiritual and I've studied a lot of that. And then now I'm just feeling really drawn to go back to school and study psychology or neuropsychology. I'm on the fence. And it's really because it's like I want to infiltrate the system a bit. I'm like, okay, let's get in here so that then I can combine. We're going to bring in this stuff and bring some deeper understanding and deeper healing, because historically y'all haven't been doing a good job for everybody. So someone's got to get in there.
Somebody's got to get in there and do it. And I agree. And why not you is what I always say about that. You're brilliant. She's brilliant, as you guys are all hearing on the podcast. Like, she really is brilliant. And I think part of the reason we wanted to talk about Chiron, and, you know, we pulled the card of like sisterhood and understanding and all of that too, is how we're kind of contemplating the concept of how understanding this area of yourself, this humming of Chiron, this wound that is always just subtly in the background, and then sometimes comes up really big and then it goes back down a little bit, right? That ebb and flow. But how that does affect possibly purpose in life, how it might affect your self-image, and what our personal experience has been in all of that. So do you kind of want to share what you were talking about before we went on live? Because it was pretty epic.
So we were just talking about this and prepping for this, and I realized, because when you said how Chiron, understanding your Chiron and moving through that helps connect you to your purpose, I realized I've started to see this kind of pattern where it's like the Chiron feels very connected to the cross, to your purpose. And I've noticed that theme with both of us. And with a couple others, but we're just going to talk about us because we don't want to talk about people who we didn't get permission to talk about.
Right.
So,
yeah. Right.
So, like for Michelle, right? Amazing 4-1 generator. So, with the cross of insight. So, her conscious sun in Earth, as we saw a couple episodes ago, is the 4323. And that's the amazing channel of structuring, right? It's that individual knowing. It has this way of simplifying big messages. And since that's her sun in Earth, that really feeds into the cross of insight. She's here to share insights. But what is her Chiron? The gate of opinions on one side, and then the spirit of the self on the other side. So she's had this deep fear of sharing her opinions. She's had this deep fear of facing other people's opinions projected onto her. And I was like, okay, so there's this theme of like, you're here to share insights, but you're also here to be scared of opinions. So like, here's your purpose, and here's a way it's going to be really difficult for you. And I was like, wait a second. And then when I looked at mine as well. Oh, go ahead. Let's unpack yours a little bit more.
Okay. And well, what I think is interesting about that is I love how you just wrapped it all up, like insights and then opinions, and how I quickly, and you always catch me doing it, when I'm quickly talking with someone and I do have not so much of as an insight, but an opinion on something, I will always preface it by saying, if that works for you, or, just take it as it is. Like, I have all these patent answers that I've said all my life, because there was a time when I was younger, probably before I'd even gone through my Uranus opposition, where I was much more bold. I was much more opinionated as heck, right? And it got really thrown back at my face because I obviously was not mature enough to understand all of the elements, right? As that's one of the beautiful things about gaining wisdom as we get a little bit older, is like learning, I probably really was pushing that agenda onto somebody. So there my Chiron showed up a lot differently than what it does now, right? I've gone through all of these phases, and now I'm like, my opinion is important at times, but knowing when it's important and giving myself permission just to share when it's being asked, that still feels very awkward to me, in just one little elemental part of it. But learn, like you said, I'm still trying to discover that difference, right? Because what we've been doing together is like uncharted territory. There's no book out there that's going to go into the depth that her and I are going into with all this stuff. Yet. It's coming. It's coming. We are writing it, yes. And I think that this is the cool part, is like this understanding of like, no wonder I've always tripped over that part of myself. Like, well, who am I, to give an opinion on things, or who, like, my insights are typically just channeled because I'm working with somebody and I just get flooded with insights, right? I just get a download and that's it, right? But then to own it to the next level was and it's still a teeter-totter thing for me. But that's not an easy placement for Chiron, because it wants me to express, but yet the when and the how and the what becomes the challenge, that I have to learn about my own self-image. I have to learn about my own self-purpose and how that comes through. So let's dive into yours now, because that was interesting too.
Yes. Well, yeah. It's just so fun. Okay. Okay, so for mine, it's very similar. I'm a 1-3 mental projector, and I just have the channel of curiosity, or the storytelling, right? I have the cross of rulership. So I am really here to share and to teach. Like, I see the rulership really as a teacher. I always get this image of the queen, like, on the balcony, making sure all her people have what they need. And for me, I do that through information, right? Because my sun gate is 47, so I'm here to really transmute information and to share it through my channel of storytelling. But then my Chiron on both sides is gate 23, which comes out of the throat and is the voice of I know. And so here I am, meant to be a teacher, terrified to share what I know. Like, how wild is that?
Yeah, and for people who don't know all that, what she's talking about, she's got the gate. The only channel that she has, because she's a projector, is the 1156 from the throat up to the Anjana, just for people who are visualizers like I am. Which is actually one of my favorite channels in that area, because I love you people, because the way you guys can say things just freaking lands like nobody's business. And it's interesting because my juxtaposition, the insight, is part of her Chiron gate. We both have gate 23, but mine is my purpose in life, right? And hers is her Chiron trying to heal it. So it's very interesting. And how differently it shows up.
Right. Because when we think about you with the insights and how that's your conscious sun and earth and really is part of your purpose, like when you share, I know this thing, it's like that's really how you're meant to show up and share. But then that 17 comes in and is like, but is that an opinion? Is someone going to argue that opinion? Is someone going to have an opinion about what you say? What's happening? Like, maybe not say that. But that's part of what you're here to do, right? And then mine, I do have gate 45 coming out of the throat as part of my cross. It's my unconscious sun. So that one is about I have, and it's here to share what it has. And then, of course, my one channel with I believe. And so I share my stories, I share my experiences. But then it comes in, it's like, but do you know that? Like, how do you know that? Are you sure? What if somebody knows more than you and you sound like an idiot right now? Like, maybe don't share that.
Indeed. Yes. And I think, this is one layer of the Chiron that we're talking about, because we haven't, hers is in one placement, mine's in two different placements. And all of that adds up to a whole different layers of like who I am and different phases. Because I think the other part that you and I have been discussing, like when we're working with clients, is we're actually looking at what phase you are at in life. Because how Chiron expresses itself from when you were little to when you're in your 60s and 70s, right? It's going to probably play out differently as you're going through different phases. And that's the cool part that we're excited to find out the more and more experience we get with working with people with this technique that we're working out, right? Like,
Yes, to watch the journey. And it's fun that we've been through some of the transitions so that we can look back and gain our insight and wisdom from that. And then the more people we talk to and are able to work with, we're able to gather more information. And it really is fascinating to think about the layers of knowing. Like I talked about my 4th grade story last time and how I was scared to share what I know. But then I think about my Saturn return, and I just had this knowing that I was not in the right place. I knew I needed to leave, and I went back to school, and now I'm in the middle of my Uranus opposition, and I'm like, I want to go back to school. I want to know more things. But this time it's not from an insecurity, it's from a genuine curiosity. It's like, oh, I want to go dig in, and from realizing that my brain just really needs stimulation all the time. It's got to always be learning. So when you're looking back on your phases, have you noticed that too, of the transitions of how they've shown up?
That's a really good question. I think probably, I'm bouncing between, because mine's in human design aspects, it's in 17, and then my other one's in 25. And I think that I've always known about 17 in the sense of subconsciously knowing that my opinions at times, when people would come to me at a younger age, I was always the person people came to that would have problems when I was little. Like they always just came to me and talked to me, and I would give them, quote, advice. Of course, it was just childhood advice, right? It was no professionalism behind it. But I knew in that moment that was part of my thing. But the part that tripped me up probably the most when I was learning about my Chiron was actually my unconscious side, which is 25, right? That's my unconscious side. And that one was the one that didn't percolate until I was in my 40s in my Uranus opposition. That's when I started to discover that aspect of it. 17, I think I've known. I think that was my primary wound with Chiron that I was probably very conscious of. I just didn't have words to it. I didn't know how to identify it, but I knew that giving my opinions that sometimes really mattered and other times it didn't. But I think it was that 25 as I was going through my Uranus oppositions, which happens in your 40s, by the way. Right around 42 is the average, but it can be above or below that. And that's when I think, now that I look back, that's when I was trying to go through that Chiron part of me in gate 25, which has a whole new element to it, which is about spirituality, and my own gifts in that, and learning to walk through the fear of how, and I loved how you said it, how I'm fearful. Part of my Chiron is being fearful of how other people are going to have opinions of me and what my connection is with the divine and how different it is than what I was raised with. So there's that connection bubble between all of that. So sometimes your unconscious side of Chiron, you don't even necessarily see until you're a little bit older, because it's so hidden. It's in the unconscious side. It's on that. If you have a general chart, it's on the left-hand side of the chart, right? And whatever the number that is, sometimes that's going to be a little bit more difficult to identify until you get a little bit older. Not always, but sometimes. Does that resonate?
Okay, I just went back and checked. Your 25 is actually conscious, and your 17 is unconscious.
Oh, it is the opposite.
Yeah.
That's funny. That one I just, but wait a minute. I've always talked about that story when I was a kid. Oh, okay. So should I share that story really quick?
If you feel called to, yeah.
So when I was little, I was raised as a Catholic, and I was also raised, I'm born in 1969. I'm a 70s baby, and it was really the time that women were starting to speak up and say, this is who I am. You can be anything you want to be. So I would go to church with my mom, and I remember being in the back seat, and I asked her, I said, why are there no women as priests? And she said, because you can't be a priest. You can only be a nun. And we didn't even have nuns in our church. And I'm like, a nun? And she said, yeah. I said, well, I don't understand it. If I can be whatever I want to be, why can't I be a priest? Because you just can't. End of story. So it's interesting because what I identified with was years ago, I was in some retreat or some class, and someone was saying, what is your fondest memory? What is the most profound memory you have of your childhood? Because a lot of the times your life purpose is attached to that. And the only thing that came through, and I thought it was ridiculous at the time, was when I was going through confirmation, they give you the big book, and the book has all the words and the scripture and the description that the priest says to do the Holy Sacrament. And when I saw that was in my book, there was a light bulb that went off in my head. And quietly and innocently enough, I grabbed all of my stuffed animals and I put them on my bed, and I got juice in a cup, and I got some cookies or crackers, and I did the whole freaking ceremony as the priest, or a priestess, I guess. And I was lifting up that cup to all my stuffed animals and blessing my juice and blessing my cookies and my crackers. And I can tell you, it is one moment that I felt so powerful, and nobody knew I was doing it. I didn't tell a soul. You couldn't. That would be sacrilegious. But for some reason, I was so compelled to do that. So that would be, to me, it was such a joyous moment. That would be my 25, in my opinion.
Oh my gosh, in my opinion. To listen to you. So.
Oh. She caught me again and again and again. Chiron, you gotta love it.
But then it is beautiful how these two come together, because you're in this spiritual moment and really just in acceptance and divine love and universal love. What's more universal love than sharing the Eucharist with your stuffed animals? That's so sweet. But then you said, I didn't tell anybody because that would be sacrilegious. Opinions. Look how they move together. It's so
Ba-boom.
wild. Yeah.
That's insane, because I never connected the two of them. That's really cool. That's really cool. So I guess we can just skip over when I was saying the two differences, because that showed up in both ways there. Isn't that interesting?
So interesting. And this is why we do follow-up calls with people too, because you get on one call, we start unpacking some stuff, and then we want to make sure that's at least wrapped up. And this is why, and whenever it's time, we want to do retreats. We want to have longer sessions with people and group work, because I firmly believe that working in a group is so much more healing, especially when you're with a bunch of women. Because even with Michelle and I, I just did for Michelle when she did the opinions thing, didn't even notice it. And I'm like, hello. So when you have someone who just can look at you, it's like, oh, right, there it is again. Okay. And it's not even in a judgment or a bad thing. It's like, oh my gosh, look at this little piece of me that's being all cute and insecure. You're okay.
Yeah, right. Wow. And how much, and now, and it's interesting because I really got the hit before we turned on. I'm like, self-image came through really strong for me. The word self-image came through for me really strong. And now I understand that, how much my personal own Chiron has so much to do with my self-image and how I felt. And I think thus far we're seeing that quite often through people's journeys. Yeah.
Yeah. Unpacking the self-image. I know for me too, it really helped me step more into this whole identity of being a thought leader and a speaker. Oh, look, there it is. Like, let's stop hiding. So, yeah, and I could think of other people we worked with and thinking about how it moved into their self-image. Like, God, the layers.
I know. Don't you love it?
Just,
We love it.
it's wild.
Yes, indeedy. Yes, indeedy. Oh, that's really good. That's really good. Yeah. So let us know, like, what are you guys discovering about your own Chiron, right? Like, what pieces of it make sense to you and what pieces don't make sense to you? Because I don't think it's not this, I'm going to read something and it's going to be done and I understand it. Like, I remember, and I know we've said it before, but I'm going to say it again, that there have been times when I had looked through my own Chiron stuff and kind of thought I understood it. And then when you and I started working together, I was like, oh, holy moly, there's so much to it. And listen, it's still a new planet. It's only been discovered in the 70s. It's a new planet discovery. And I think we are only on, I think because of the age of Aquarius and because of the place of where Uranus is right now, that we're going to find out more things about our solar system, things that are going to really surprise people, possibly another minor planet coming in, or how asteroids are really making an impact. Like, that's the new thing I really do see with true astrologers, that's all they do for a living is study, like, the asteroids. Like, their information now is coming through really powerfully because I think it takes time to integrate all this information. I know for you and I, we're still unpacking it. We're still integrating it. I don't think it ever stops. But the new frontier is, how can I learn myself so well that when life's bumps or speed bumps come up, I feel more confident in walking through them because I know myself so well. Mm-hmm. And that only gets more profound if we're not getting so closed in with our belief systems, and instead we're going through life is actually, my life and my journey and my blueprint is so unique to me that I will just continue to keep learning. And of course, we both have 1 lines in our, 4-1 and 1-3, like that, that's, we love that. And we hope that this helps other people, no matter what phase you're going through, to understand yourself even better, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I think this just helps to embrace the aging process as well, honestly. Like, when you're talking, and the more I learn about the different transitions, the Saturn return, the Uranus opposition, the Chiron return, the second Saturn return, it's like, oh no, we just keep getting better and better with each phase, and that's really exciting. But like, imagine if I had known this. Imagine if I had known I was a mental projector and I had known this kind of fear thing. It's hard to really guess how it would have helped me, because I mean, when we're younger, I think everybody in general is a little more stubborn when they're younger, but I know I was like trying really hard to be right. I was also very religious, so I don't know if I'd listen. But anyway, let's say theoretically, like, how much more would it have helped me to know, like, hey, it's okay for you to know stuff. You're here to know stuff and then to share what you know. Like, that's what you're here to do. It's okay. So,
right? Coming from you, the person who like would just tone it down, right? Yeah. Like, feeling like I don't know, there's nothing for me to share. Like, I just need to follow and not lead. And now you're like, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah. I'm just going to follow. I'm not going to ask questions. Everybody knows more than I do. I'm dumb. Yeah. Pretty amazing. And then even for you with the insights and the channeling and the amazing gift that you have with that, like, how would it have been if, way long ago, you're like, hey, guess what? You're a gifted channeler. And you get to share that with people.
Yeah, you think about like the younger generations coming up, and of course that's always our hope and our goal, is that as these tools, these blueprints of who your children are, your grandchildren or your cousins, whatever, like, that we start to embrace one another's unique abilities, right? Instead of trying to break it down to say, this is bad, this is a bad part of you. And I think, and of course, anything that's against us, we can use it as the launching pad, right? So it's never, I'm not saying anything bad happened to me within all of that, but I can't, like you said, I can't imagine how different it would have been had somebody told me, you have this ability and it's so naturally you don't even notice that you do it. And if you really learn to embrace that, how much more quickly, you're going to be able to help yourself and other people with understanding that. But it was just so far from me. I couldn't have played with it. Like,
yeah,
it wasn't in my reality. I didn't know it existed. It was nothing that was talked about. In fact, who was I just watching? Oh, there was some woman on. There's a great YouTube channel called Soul, Soul, Soul Level. I think that's what it's called. Mm. And he interviews a ton of different channelers. He was a director and got out of that industry and started to interview all these channelers. And one woman who was just on there, she's in her 70s or 80s. And she was like, my family believed, like our culture where we came from Europe, we understood the gifts and talents of people who were, she called them seers. Like there are some people who are called seers, like she knew things that were coming. And when her grandmother died, she told her father, you're going to have a seer. It'll be a female. So when she came in, she was nurtured that way since she was a child.
Wow.
She said it was nothing that wasn't talked about. She said when I was growing up, it was like, it was a whisper that so-and-so is a seer, go ask them. But she said it wasn't anything we told outside of our culture because it would have been, she said, so I was so nurtured in it. Like there's nothing, like my whole world, when people would say this is weird, she would be like, I couldn't comprehend that because my life was all about me being a seer. And I'm like, right. Isn't that interesting? It's all about perspective, right?
Wow.
Like,
it is
crazy.
All about perspective, which is all we're offering is a different perspective, honestly. Yes. Like we are sharing our perspective on your placements and your energies and what we see. And a lot of times that is all you need is like somebody else to point out the amazingness that you've gotten lost in the shadow and the muck and the not self and the ideas of what you think you're supposed to be. So
that was so well said. We all get lost in the muck. Yeah, mm-hmm. Let's pull you out of the muck. Let's spray you down and put you some nice clothes on, good scent, and let you know what an amazing human being every human being is, and the uniqueness of you. And even though Chiron is going to be popping up, let's embrace it. Let's laugh. Let's learn it so well that we can embrace it, right?
Yes, because honestly, so one time, I'm going to share this story because one time you and I were channeling Chiron, we were talking about stuff, and I just got this image of like Chiron in a field, like playing around, and he was like, y'all, it's not that serious. He's like, yes, it's a wound that you come in with. It's part of your soul's journey, but you humans like freak out about it, and it's really not that serious. Well, like nobody's playing with me.
Oh yeah. And isn't that the truth? I mean, you think about what he is. He's a centaur. Like that alone, you know what I mean? Like, oh, I love that.
Yeah. So that's really like shifted my energy. And so even like, I mean, you can hear Michelle and I talk about it. And even when I called it out before, and it's like, you can laugh. You're like, oh yeah. Oh, that's cute. Look at me just being scared of my opinion. Look at me not sharing what I know. So that's where the lightheartedness comes in, and you can move out of that judgment. And yeah, so it just made me laugh so much, like this image of a centaur, like bucking around a field of flowers, just like playing, just like.
Unbelievable.
Like
I love that.
Yeah.
I flippin' love that. That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, this has been a great podcast. I hope that it's helped other people to really start to identify what your self-image is, right? For me, this has been again, every time Rebeka and I get together, there's always these big aha moments. So thank you for supporting me in that today, Rebeka.
Thank you for supporting me. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, yes, it's been very exciting. We love doing these podcasts. And again, reach out to us, through our email, through wherever you're listening to. There's always places that you can leave comments or questions, and we'll eventually get to you if you've got any. But we, any ideas that you want us to go more on, we can. But so as we always say, like with Cynthia Sue Larson, one of my favorites, how good can it get? Like truly, how good can life get right now? How good can it get? I'm excited to see the adventure go on with you.
Me too. Thank you for being on this adventure with me.
Yay.
Thank you for going on this journey with us. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like and subscribe. And if you're ready to learn more, find us on abstractcuriosity.com.